Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our July webinar. I hope you all are having a wonderful summer. I'm Marlise Taylor, Director of Research for Visit North Carolina, and really happy to have you all here with us today. Today, I'm really happy to have a research webinar for you and happy to introduce you to Simon Moriarty, who is the new VP of Research and Analytics for MMGY Travel Intelligence. You know that we have been working with MMGY for a number of years, and today Simon is going to present the results from the most recent Portrait of American Travelers quarterly study. We've been a sponsor of this study for several years, and it's really allowed us to have access to really recent travel intention, sentiments, other key insights on a regular basis. So today, you're going to hear a little bit about U.S. travelers in general, but also the most part of this presentation by Simon, he's going to talk about what we call North Carolina prospects. And those are U.S. travelers who have indicated an interest in visiting North Carolina. So I know you're going to get a lot out of this. And without any further ado, I'm going to thank Simon for his participation in our webinar. And we're going to get started. I'm going to go off camera while Simon presents, but I will tell you that we have built in plenty of time for question and answers. If you would type your questions in the Q&A, I'll be monitoring those and we'll provide them to Simon as well as myself at the end of his presentation. So thank you all so much, and thank you, Simon, for joining us.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon from the London office of MMGY. So as Marley said, my name's Simon Moriarty. I'm VP of Research and Analytics in the MMGY Travel Intelligence Division based out of our London office. And yeah, it's a very happy to be here to present. It's a pleasure to be here and talk through the findings of the Portrait of American Travelers, focusing on the summer edition that we just released last week, looking specifically for this webinar at the North Carolina prospects. Seeing an overview of what's driving travelers, what's incentivizing them, what are the concerns that they have about their travel habits at the moment, but also future intention. So picking out some key issues and really hopefully giving you some interesting and insightful information that will be useful going forward. As Marley said, there is time for questions. And of course, if there's anything that I can't answer or we don't have time to go into in too much detail today, we're more than happy to take those questions and see if we can help a bit longer term and get back to you post-webinar. So just a quick overview of our methodology. We publish the Portrait of American Travelers quarterly, and we deal exclusively with leisure travelers. So we're talking to consumers who are active leisure travelers so that we know the intent they have to travel in the short, medium, and long term. We also are able, because we do it on a quarterly basis, we're able to track behavior, track changes, create trend lines between different editions, different quarters. So we can see, for example, or compare summer on summer, but we can also compare quarter to quarter. So we're able to really paint a very vivid, up to the minute, very realistic picture of the American traveler. And when we talk about the American traveler, the sample size is 4,500 US adults. We surveyed those in May 2024 for this summer edition. The focus of this webinar is the North Carolina prospect, as mentioned. So this is those who intend to take at least one overnight leisure trip over the next 2 years. They're interested, as Marlise said, they've indicated a level of interest at 4 or 5 on a 5-point scale in visiting North Carolina as part of those trips in the next 24 months. That sums up to a total of 1,449 travelers who are interested in visiting the region. The other detail that you may be interested in is this is a random selection process, and we carry out the research, or we carry out the survey online over a 20-minute period, and we balance it using statistical weighting methods to ensure when we're talking about the American traveler, we are using data that represents that cohort. We also cover 5 generations, but we only really talk about 4 generations of adults surveyed. These are defined as I'm sure you're very familiar with, Gen Z, or Gen Z, I should say, millennials, Gen X, and boomers. we have a very small number of silent GI respondents. So as a result of the small sample size there, 3% of that 76 and over age group, we don't include their individual results in the report. So without further ado, to get into the details, the first thing I'd like to talk about is the Travel Outlook snapshot. So this presents an overview of travellers and what they're interested in. And we're seeing that in general, travellers increase their travel budgets because of a perception and an understanding and an assumption in many cases that there are increasing costs associated with travel compared to previous years. And 60% of active leisure travellers plan to spend more on travel when they take a trip in the next 12 months than they have spent in either of the past 2 years. Comparing that to Q1 of this year, that was slightly higher at 61%. And if you see there on the right-hand side, the granularity of that research, some slight changes between Q1 of 2024 and Q2 of 2024. The main reason that people are increasing their travel budgets, the main factor that's contributed to that is the expectation of spending more because people expect that attractions, food, beverages in the destinations that they're visiting for a vacation, they expect those to cost more than they did a few years ago. They're also expecting to spend more because lodgings and accommodations seem to cost more than they did a few years ago, and the cost of gas is also having an impact. Airline travel and the associated cost of that is also on the increase. So people are preparing for either a combination of perceived costs, assumption of costs, but also costs that they are aware of that are already having a tangible impact on their day-to-day lives, such as the increase in the cost of gas. And in terms of future travel, boomers plan to take the highest average number of trips during the next 12 months, and they expect to spend the most on leisure travel at the same time. So you can see here the difference between generations, the average number of holidays or vacations, I should say, remembering the audience, that people are expecting to take in the next 12 months. It goes from an average of 3.4 among the Gen Z cohort, 3.5 for millennials, a slight increase to 3.7 among the Gen X generation, and then a fairly significant bump to 4.3 among boomers. At the same time, the average amount that people are expecting to spend during that period rises exponentially with the number of people or the number of trips that those groups are expecting to take in that time period. And compared to this time last year, summer 2023, spending intentions also continue to increase. As I said, people are expecting that things are going up in price, the things associated with their vacations, things like gas, accommodation, food and drink. Travel intentions themselves are slightly down, but spending intentions are up significantly. And this is in line with the research that shows that 66% of North Carolina prospects who reported expectations to spend more on travel over the next 12 months than they have recently, they are citing those costs that I've talked about, the increased costs of attractions, the increased costs of food, lodging, accommodation, and gas. So the average number of vacations that people were expecting to take over the next 12 months was 4.1 in 2023, is shrunk slightly to 3.8 in 2024. But as you can see, the average amount that people are expecting to spend has risen in the same time from $4,228 to $4,575. And we're seeing that people are still planning to travel. There's an expectation that things will cost more, but it's not having a huge amount of impact on people still wanting to travel, wanting to get away. And we'll go into some of the reasons why people are traveling. And in terms of the expected timing, more than 8 in 10 of the North Carolina prospects are planning to travel for a leisure trip, an overnight leisure trip within the next 6 months. You can see, again, some slight changes from 2023. Those kind of immediate travel plans have gone down slightly to 25%, but within the next 3 months has risen from 34 to 38%, and within the next 6 months has risen from 23 to 20%, which suggests that because of these external factors like the rising costs, potential political uncertainty, either within the US or more globally, people are maybe spending a little bit more time planning their trips, spending more time to build up their budgets to travel as well. At MMGY, you may be familiar with, we have what we call a travel sentiment index, where we continuously monitor people's attitudes and behaviors around this set of different metrics. where we score the metrics and are able to compare those month on month. This goes back all the way to 2007. And you can see here how things have changed across those different areas of importance, from interest in travel, perceived safety of travel, affordability, time available to take those trips, personal finances available specifically for travel, and the quality of service of travel. And perceived safety of travel has decreased from last year, while the metrics around personal finances, time available, and interest in travel have all increased. And compared to last year, as I said, we can compare year on year or quarter on quarter. Compared to summer 2023, North Carolina prospects are similarly impacted. There's not a huge amount of significant change by all these factors when it comes to planning travel. When we ask those respondents, what are they impacted by when they're planning their trips? Inflationary pressures on the household budget still impacting the same number of people, 31%. The price of gas has risen slightly, or as a factor, the price of gas itself has risen probably more than slightly. People are still looking for great deals, so the availability of deals, that makes sense when you think about how people's perceptions of cost have gone up. So people are looking out for those deals that will save them money. Concerns about personal financial situations and job security has declined as an impact factor slightly since this time last year, which is a positive. As has concern about time available for travel. Perhaps reflects a greater level of flexibility among people's in people's workplaces, or having more flexibility in terms of taking shorter breaks more quickly with less notice. Interestingly, concern about contracting or spreading COVID has risen. Again, it's extremely impacting 17% of people compared to 15%. And potential disruptions at the airport, while still an irritation and a potential disruption, sits at the bottom of the list. So thinking about the North Carolina prospect in more detail, we can see when we talk about this cohort, the interest in visiting North Carolina is, again, relatively unchanged. Looking back year on year, we ask with the US leisure traveler base of just over 3,500 who express an interest in visiting North Carolina. 13% this year are extremely interested compared to 12% last year. Somewhat interested has risen up to 28%. And then not at all interested has declined from 28 to 24%. And interest in North Carolina as a destination continues to be the highest among the younger consumer, among millennials, but we're seeing a significant boost when it comes to thinking about older boomers. That's increased from 26% in summer 2023 to 35% this year. You can see from the rest of the data, it's remained relatively, if not totally unchanged. Gen Z, millennials continuing at the same rate. Gen X has gone up slightly. Young boomers has also gone up slightly. And a similar percentage of North Carolina prospects report that they're more likely to prioritize destinations based on what those destinations offer. And they prioritize as well based on the type of party that they are traveling with. So who are they going on vacation with? So 39% prioritize their destination choice based on the type of travel party. So taking into account all of the different factors that entails. So the different attractions and opportunities that appeal to the various people within that party. Obviously, cost is important when thinking about all the different people that you're traveling with. 43% prioritize the destination choice based on the type of travel offering. So again, going back to that previous slide of how long people are planning ahead, thinking about the reasons why they might be taking time to plan ahead and why they're visiting different destinations. They're considering multiple factors, including those factors that are outside of their control, like rising costs, but also very closely thinking about the things that they have some control over. And in terms of sources of travel inspiration, so when people are thinking about where to go, in terms of planning a trip specifically to North Carolina, recommendations from friends and family are the main source of inspiration. That's the source of inspiration for just under half, 46%. And then you can see a relatively steep difference. It goes down to 38% for the second most important source of inspiration, which is travel review websites, and then online travel agencies. Social media as well, online portals, YouTube, visitnc.com. Social media posts are sources of inspiration for a quarter of North Carolina prospects. So we can see that this ties in relatively neatly to our research more generally into American travelers and also global travelers as a whole in terms of the types of information they want, where they want to get that information from, who they trust, the speed with which they want that information delivered. So recommendations from friends and family and travel review websites obviously clearly points to trust in the source of information, but also having that kind of peer review information is very important. People want to see realistic impressions and interpretations of the destinations that they're visiting. Online travel agencies and the likes of YouTube obviously ties in with people's continued time spent using online sources for all of the different types of information they're gathering at any given time. And a more traditional, or I guess more historic, you would say now, sources of information such as traditional travel advisors, TV advertising, print advertising, are still important. 16 to 14% thereabouts use those as inspiration. Podcasts, despite the growth of podcasts as a source, we're not seeing a huge uptick in terms of podcasts being a particular challenger to some of these other sources of inspiration. They're still important for those people that do use them for inspirational travel advice. But consuming podcast information is probably more passive. And people, when they're looking for inspiration, will be engaging in different sources in a more active way. So speaking to friends and family, going online and carrying out a specific search, for example. And in terms of the most influential types of travel media or news stories, top 10 best of lists are the most important, the most influential when looking to travel. Again, think about North Carolina prospects specifically and comparing North Carolina prospects to the overall US traveler cohort. 50% of US travelers find top 10 best of lists most information. That grows to 61% among North Carolina. Suggested vacation itineraries, again, North Carolina prospects, 47%, so above average compared to the rest of the US. Preferred partner discounts as well. So again, kind of ties into the concerns that people have, or at least the awareness that people have of rising costs that are impacting them and potential rising costs in the future. In terms of influential brand partnerships, preferred partner discounts, so things like activities or lodgings and accommodation within a specific destination. That's influential for 51% of North Carolina prospects. Again, a slight difference compared to the overall average of US leisure travelers. And within the Portrait of American Travelers summer edition that we just released, we focus on a number of what we call modules. So taking kind of key themes that influence travel decision making, but areas that really drive people to take an interest in specific destinations, but also areas that people are considering that impact on their day-to-day life and maybe they haven't considered yet, but are growing in importance or shrinking in importance. And this really, again, contributes to having that full picture of what the American traveler is all about, what kind of thing they want, what kind of thing they care about, and how that will impact their travel behaviors in the future. The first of which is road trips. And we can see here, again, this data looks at the North Carolina prospect again. Slightly fewer of those prospects took a road trip during the past 12 months. You can see the comparative data there. 71% of North Carolina prospects took a road trip in the preceding 12 months in 2023. That's gone down slightly to 68% this year. And in terms of intention to take a road trip in the future, not a significant change. 79% said this time last year that they would be interested in taking a road trip in the next year. 78% this year have said the same thing. And when it comes to road tripping, North Carolina prospects are planning to visit slightly more places on their next road trip. The average number is the number of cities or places that the prospects intend to visit on their next road trip has gone up to 3.7 compared to 3.5 in 2023. And this actually correlates again with our global data. And when we're looking at overall travel behaviors, there's more and more of an inclination for people when they are planning a trip or taking a specific type of trip, they want to do more when they're there. They want to use one trip to take advantage of visiting multiple destinations if they can. That's not to say that they want to go to multiple countries in one trip or they want to travel for thousands of kilometers in one trip, but they want to try and consume as much as possible when they are visiting destinations. So visiting two, three, four places, a lot of people are still over a third are not sure, but relatively small numbers when it comes to road trips specifically only want to visit one place. And when it comes to motivations, we're seeing that motivations for past or future road trips, that spontaneity, again, that kind of ties in with this demand to explore as much as possible. People don't, obviously, road trips have the potential to be more spontaneous. There's a bit more freedom and a bit more flexibility for many people. But the most cited motivations for having taken a road trip or planning to take a road trip, that ability to be spontaneous is hugely significant. People, as I say, want to explore multiple places in one trip and they want to pack everything they need for vacation in the car. Lots of benefits, again, tying into those, basic human needs for convenience, ease, comfort, all of those different things. Being able to explore in a way that suits your lifestyle is something that appeals to lots and lots of travelers. The second module that we cover in this edition of the report is diversity in travel. Obviously, a hugely important issue and something that travelers are aware of, but they're also more and more travelers are thinking about issues like diversity when it comes to choosing destinations. And 4 in 10 North Carolina prospects agree that they're more likely to visit a destination if they see diversity represented in the advertising for that destination. So agreeing with these different statements, the percentages there you can see compared to last year as well, the number of people that would like to see diverse ownership among the brands or products sold in hotels and resorts. So things like cultural, racial, ethnic, sexual, or physical attributes. 42%, so again, a slight decrease from 43% last year. The number of people agreeing with the statement, I feel like I have to be more aware of my surroundings when I travel than most because of their own identity, their cultural background, their heritage, their lifestyle, or their ability. That's again declined slightly, but it's something that a significant number of travelers are aware of and are thinking of, and it's having a tangible impact on where they want to visit and when they are choosing destinations, what kind of information they're looking for when they plan those trips. And half of those travelers who are interested in visiting North Carolina are choosing destinations that offer diverse cultural experiences. Again, no huge changes compared to last year, but the influential factors when choosing these destinations purely for leisure, that it offers a diverse cultural experience, whether that's through the food and drink on offer, the history, the culture that people can explore when they visit. If it reflects their own culture, that's an influence for over half of travelers. Commitment to diversity and inclusion is something that is growing, has grown over recent years, and I think we'll see continue to grow as it becomes a selling point for destinations. And it's something that travelers, specifically consumers in general, are more and more aware of, but they're also becoming more and more active and more vocal about these issues themselves as individuals or as demographic groups. So it's no surprise that that is trickling into the travel markets, having an impact on the practical and the tangible planning processes and visiting behaviors that we're seeing among travelers. And again, we see year on year some slight changes compared to 2023. A similar percentage of prospects to visit North Carolina believe that there does continue to be inequity in the travel industry, and a similar percentage believe that the industry is making strides to address those inequities. 41% last year and 39% this year of those travelers who are interested in visiting North Carolina believe there are racial, ethnic, sexual, and/or physical inequities when it comes to the travel industry. And then just about half, 51% last year, 50% exactly this year, of those respondents who believe the travel industry is making strides. So obviously a lot of ground still to make up for the travel industry, and not necessarily in terms of what the travel industry is doing, but perhaps being more visible, more vocal about the changes that are being made. The important thing there is that, as with anything that brands do to attract new customers or change the opinion of existing customers, transparency, authenticity, and honesty are obviously hugely important when it comes to these issues. And moving on to the next module about family travel, you can see here that family travel across the entire American traveler cohort, 84% of that group agree that going on vacation brings their family closer. We don't question what people think about the time spent with their family after they've come back from that holiday, but that may be something for a different webinar. But compared, and again, thinking about the North Carolina prospect specifically, compared to April of last year, significantly more of the North Carolina prospect group plan to travel with children over the next 12 months. Again, perhaps reflecting that flexibility that we're seeing with more and more travelers, people choosing different types of vacation, having a bit more freedom perhaps to choose different types of things like road trips where they can, the whole family can get in a car, or reflecting changes in the travel industry itself, where brands, DMOs, organizers are showcasing the family-friendly activities and offerings and deals as well, importantly, that are available. And looking at 2023 to 2024, similar percentage of prospects are planning to take a multi-generational trip in the next 12 months. So this is traveling with three or more generations of their family in the next 12 months. That's gone up slightly from last year. Apologies for the typo in there. Compared to April 2023, it's gone up from 35% to 36%. Again, reflected perhaps that brands and destinations themselves are doing more to appeal to multi-generational families, because the multi-generational household is becoming more important. The traditional family model is continuing to change. Perhaps those destinations are being more vocal about their offerings. Perhaps we're still seeing the impact of the post-COVID world, where people want to spend more time with different members of their family. They want to engage with these new experiences and share them with the people that they care about. And travel advisors. Those interested in visiting North Carolina, the prospect group, they're using travel advisors to book vacation packages and tour lodgings and airline tickets. So looking at the types of service that people are using when it comes to utilizing the travel agency services to book those activities. Again, you can see year on year some fairly significant changes. To book a vacation package or a tour, 55% of people this year who are interested in visiting North Carolina are using travel advisors to do so. Again, it's about finding the most relevant information that pertains to their particular situation. People are looking for travel advisors to help them cut through a lot of the admin as well, to find what's best for them in a crowded market. And you can see the comparison again becomes slightly static year on year, booking lodgings, booking cruises, booking airline tickets, some slight discrepancies year on year. And using travel advisors as well to get the best prices for a vacation. As I said, cutting out some of the admin, the hassle, taking the time out of researching and booking to ensure that what they're booking meets their expectations. Again, with thinking about earlier in the presentation, with this expectation that costs are rising, people want to make sure they're getting value for money. Compared to last year, significantly more prospects thinking about visiting North Carolina plan to use travel advisors to gain access to experiences that they can't on their own, to get recommendations on the trending places to visit. So again, this idea of peer reviews is important. They want to experience things that many people are starting to experience. They don't want to miss out, I should say. And actually relatively few, or significantly fewer compared to last year, are using travel advisors just to get the best prices. So it's all about that experience. It's all about what the destination offers, what the vacation means to them and their families as well. And thinking about travel and traveler perspectives, we know, and it's not all doom and gloom, and hopefully this hasn't been a pessimistic presentation, but North Carolina prospects are feeling optimistic about the future. They're feeling optimistic about the future of their children as well as their own future. They're less optimistic about the future of the country and the world in general. And you can see there's been some changes year on year. The future of their children, obviously we only asked that among the cohort that do have children, has declined slightly in terms of optimism levels from 83% to 80%, but that's still a hugely significant number. 73 has gone up to 74% when thinking about their own future. And then thinking about things like job security, we saw earlier that people are less concerned than they have been about their job security. So the future of work, future of local community is significantly important. But optimism is declining slightly, or is not the most optimistic about these things. And there's some small percentage changes year on year, but the future of the US and the future of the world are still things that people are not as optimistic about. But we see this almost in a cyclical, obviously we're in an election year, both in the UK and in the US, and that naturally heightens concerns and fears, and also optimism and expectation that different people have about different things that they think will happen in the future, such as the impact on the economy, the impact on their own lifestyle, the things that they want out of their local community or their broader socioeconomic communities. And I think once the election years are over and political parties, political figures are stabilized and in place, at least then people know what to expect in many ways, and that optimism perhaps plateaus out across many of these factors. And as I said, it's all about the experiences. It's not just about going somewhere for the sake of it. People want to make memories when they're on vacation. And again, we can see among the North Carolina prospect, compared year on year, some slight increases. The memories that people get from vacations are more valuable to them than any material items that they purchased in the last year. And we see 81% of travelers who are interested in visiting North Carolina agree with that statement. And then finally, in terms of our summer module, end on a high, I suppose, talking about cannabis tourism. Obviously, a hugely important area, something that we're seeing a lot of traction in terms of press coverage, media coverage, but also huge shifts in legalization, legislation, not just in the US, but globally as well. So this slide gives you an overview of the cannabis traveler in general. So this is across the American traveler cohort that we question. And the cannabis traveler is what we define as an active leisure traveler who is interested in participating in a cannabis-related activity while on vacation. We see that 34% of active leisure travelers, so over a third, are interested in participating. They will take 3.6 leisure trips over the next 12 months, and they expect to spend about $3,500 on those leisure trips over that time period. Unsurprisingly, perhaps the breakdown of generations who, when it comes to the percentages of which are cannabis travelers, 64% are Gen Z, 13% boomers. The top travel motivators for this group to get away and unplug, again, perhaps unsurprisingly, a sense of relaxation, escapism, de-stressing. Interestingly, it's not a solo activity, or as many people may expect. 77% say they want to spend time with their spouse or their children. 71% want to explore nature in the outdoors. And you can see there a list of the top destinations of interest for this group. Island of Hawaii, Maui in Hawaii, Vegas, Honolulu, again, Hawaii, hugely important. And then San Diego, New York City, New Orleans, and Florida Keys and Key West at the bottom of that list. When it comes to prospects compared to US leisure travelers in general, thinking about the interest in cannabis-related activities while traveling, 14% of North Carolina prospects compared to 11% of US leisure travelers say that cannabis is part of their recreational lifestyle. They consume it in some form at least once a month, and they are interested in cannabis experiences while on vacation. So they will actively seek out destinations that perhaps offer those experiences. And then importantly, that middle ground, 27% compared to 23% of all US travelers, they're not regular consumers of cannabis, but they're open to cannabis-related experiences while they're traveling. And then you can see that, again, perhaps unsurprisingly, as people's attitudes maybe haven't shifted as quickly as legislation has changes, and people aren't necessarily rushing to make huge lifestyle changes or change their habits. But 59% of North Carolina prospects are not interested in cannabis-related experiences while traveling. 65% of overall US travelers also agree with that statement. So it's something that does impact a large number of travelers. It's something that people are interested in, but it's not necessarily going to dictate all of their travel choices or all of their vacation choices going forward, but it is something to be aware of. So to summarize, obviously a lot of information to think about when it comes to the North Carolina prospect, but also US traveler habits in general. To summarize some of those key issues and think about the key insights, just summarized here on this slide, when it comes to the North Carolina prospect, 4 in 10 travelers express interest in visiting North Carolina, with interest continuing, as I said, to be the highest among millennials, but we're seeing a increased interest among older boomers. So generational changes compared to this time last year are more significant. 43% when it comes to traveling of North Carolina prospects as I said earlier, report that they are more likely to prioritize destinations based on the offerings that those destinations have. 39% prioritize based on the type of party. So thinking and being conscious about the people that they're traveling with, their different needs, their different issues or concerns or barriers or challenges that they may have when traveling. And aside from their significant others, culinary experiences, urban destinations, mountain vacations are rated highly for visiting with friends. Visiting historic sites is important for group tours and family travelers, and beach vacations and outdoor and nature vacations are also important for family travelers. And half of North Carolina prospects rely on recommendations from family and friends. 4 in 10 rely on travel review websites for inspiration when considering a trip to the region. So as I said, this idea of realistic, trustworthy, peer-based information is hugely important. And thinking about the outlook in general, well, intentions are down from last year, down from 4.1 trips in the summer of 2023 to 3.8. This quarter, spending intentions continue to increase. Obviously, there's external factors that will always be out of the control of the majority of travelers, but they are considering those factors when it comes to not necessarily cutting back, but they're thinking about how much money they're going to spend on specific trips. So that's reducing the number of trips that they expect to take, but the spending that they expect to do while on those trips is increasing. And travelers are planning to spend just under $350 more than they planned in the summer of 2023. So this year it's a total of just over $4,500 compared to just over $4,200 in 2023, which is, as I said earlier, in line with that 66% group of the prospects who report expectations to spend more on travel over the next 12 months. And then perceived safety, when we look at the travel sentiment index, perceived safety of travel has decreased while personal finances available, time available, and interest in travel have all increased. So people are a bit more, have a few more concerns, but they also have a few more freedoms as well. Inflationary pressures on household budget and the price of gas will continue to impact most travelers as well, but they haven't changed in level of impact compared to last year. So obviously these things, these external factors, these economic factors, sometimes take a little bit of time to bed in and have a long-term impact. So we're seeing that people are aware of these things, but they're not directly impacting everyone at this point. So I'd like to say this opportunity to say thank you for listening, and hand over back to Marlies, because I think we have time for some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simon. A reminder, if you have questions, please just pop them in the Q&A. I do have a couple, though. With that perception of safety that you just ended with, do we know specifically what that means? Is that, I know during COVID it was COVID related, but is that still kind of health related, or are those perceptions of being a victim of theft or violence, or is it more subjective and allowing the respondents to answer as they will?
It's I will find the definition for you and confirm that, but it's perception of personal safety and security. So it's not specific to health, because we do ask specific COVID related questions for obvious reasons. But the overall index about safety is kind of, I think, a more of a catch-all, but it does include personal security, personal safety. So not just, or not specific to health concerns, but it's about perception of a destination, or perception of your own safety within a destination or when traveling.
Okay, great, thank you. And then you mentioned travel intentions are down, but spending intentions are up for the next 12 months. And you said the largest part of that is because of the perception or reality of increased prices. Is there any indication that length of stay is changing as well for the next 12 months?
I believe we do have that data. I don't have it off the top of my head, unfortunately. But that's something that I will confirm after the webinar. I think my own opinion is that we're seeing the average number of trips decline slightly, but people are spending more on the trips that they're taking. They want to also, alongside that, we saw it in the road trip data, but we've seen it across other research that we've done into the American traveler. We're seeing that people want to experience more things and visit more destinations in one trip. So that suggests that length of stay is perhaps not is not being cut short. It may be lengthening for some people, because people want to make the most of those trips that they are taking. So that kind of naturally suggests that maybe they're doing fewer trips, but spending longer on those trips, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think we are seeing that reflected globally, as I said, in terms of that desire to experience more places, more destinations in one trip to kind of make the most of things, which for me would suggest that the length of stay is something that people will consider, because they don't want to. I don't think people, and I'm sure everyone on this call has been a victim of this, where you try and cram in as much as possible during a weekend away, and the thing that you remember afterwards is not the things you did, but how stressful it was. So, the more that people do that, the more that they will think next time, let's spend longer in this state or in this country or at this destination and try and do more, but in a sensible kind of, in a way that meets our needs.
And then with the road trips intentions, I noticed that the road trip intentions are higher for the North Carolina prospects than U.S. travelers. And so I'm wondering about seasonality of travel and if we're seeing kind of more off-season. I know seasons are different for different destinations, but I'm wondering if we're seeing more off-season or off-peak travel in general. Just noticing that the intentions for North Carolina prospects are higher for September through December. I'm curious if you all are seeing that nationwide.
Yeah, nationwide, I think the most popular month for road trips was July. And I think that was a fairly significant kind of percentage that said July was the most. And I think that's probably more to do with, the time off that people can have, the time out of school for if you're taking your family, that kind of thing. Also the traditional incentive or traditional kind of move towards a summer holiday rather than doing things off peak. I would imagine that perhaps older travelers who are planning a road trip would be more flexible in terms of time, in terms of time of the year that they can go away. We do have the data that shows the different levels of popularity for road trips per month, again, which I can share.
Yeah, so I'm curious, since those road trip intentions for North Carolina prospects were higher in September through December than
Yeah.
US, I'm wondering if it is correlated with that older boomers being more interested in North Carolina than they were last year. I'm just wondering if there's any correlation there. We're
Yeah,
trying, we try to promote all seasons in North Carolina. We just
yeah.
finished our first year-round campaign, and so just curious as to what we can expect going forward.
Yeah, I think there probably is correlation in terms of the flexibility of that generation to travel at different times of the year. They're not as rigorously kind of tied to work, for example, but also term times for school or college. And also there may be and again, this is kind of my own opinion, there may be a less desire for older consumers to travel in hotter weather.
Mm.
They feel that if they have the flexibility to avoid that, then, and I'm sure all generations would want that flexibility, but if you have the flexibility to avoid driving in your car when it's 100 degrees outside, but you can still go to the same place, you can explore it. It's also potentially less busy, which older generations may also be more concerned about, because of things like mobility issues, but also just the patience that they have, that they don't want to stand in line or queue for hours to get somewhere. If they can go at a time where those challenges or those barriers are removed, then I think there's a probable correlation there between the popularity of that time period and the age group that are more interested in visiting North Carolina.
Great. I do not have any other questions right now, but just want to thank you again for presenting this data is just really hot off the presses. Again, it just came out last week, so really excited that you were able to present to us. And just want to remind everyone, our next webinar is August 8th, where we're going to discuss best practices for crisis communications and issue management. So you'll learn how Visit NC and our partner agencies are responding, and how we can help you respond to natural disasters and crises statewide, how to collaborate with officials to provide visitors that timely information. We're going to discuss how you, our local DMO partners, can communicate your area-specific messages and updates to us at Visit NC, and then Also, we're going to explore Visit NC's protocol for addressing political issues, travel boycotts, threats, other sensitive topics. So please join us August 8th for that webinar. And again, thank you, Simon, and thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.